Sorry about the lateness. We're going to start the meeting now. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ashley, are you on the Zoom? Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So, I don't know what's the protocol if the secretary is not here to who does the roll call? Just announce that we're all here. Well, she's on Zoom. She's here via Zoom. All right, we had no executive session, so I'm going to go right to public comment. I'm going to bring Jeanette Clifton. Come on up. Ms. Clifton, just so you know, if you can state your name, your township, and of course you have 2 minutes.
Hello, I am Jeanette Clifton, and I live in Lower Pottsgrove. I just had a question about the grade-based requirements is going from 70% to 65%. If you could go into more detail about that, because it seems like you're dumbing down the students and making it a lot easier to graduate, and it's like that doesn't have high expectations for the kids and giving them opportunities. And that's what I was worried about.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you very much. What she's speaking on is action item 7.1, which we will discuss. Obviously, some of the board may have some conversation and discussion about moving it from 70 to 65. Do we have anybody online? We do not. All right, so we're going to move on to the reporters. Actually, no, we have a presentation first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. Tom Kelly from Zeswitz Music on behalf of the National Association of Music Merchants, who will present a Best Communities for Music Award, Education Award to Pottsgrove School District. This is Pottsgrove's third year receiving the award, and we were one of 700 districts across the country to receive it. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here this evening. It's an honor to honor you. We have most of the instrumental and general musical staff here. I come to you tonight twofold. I'm the education representative for Zeswitz Music. I get the opportunity to work with the educators here in the Pottsgrove School District on a weekly basis. But I'm also representing the NAM Foundation, and that's the National Association of Music Merchants, and which Zeswitz is a member of. We do honor those districts that apply for this particular accolade. Just a little bit of scope about this process. There's 14,000 school districts plus in the country. And as stated earlier, just about 700 actually applied for this and won this award. That's astounding in terms of the numbers. It is a 32-page application, which did go into some of the COVID things, and what schools were offering, what the teachers were doing for the students, what performance opportunities there were, how they overcame some of the challenges, and that was also part and parcel of this application process. It is reviewed by the University of Kansas. It's not reviewed by the NAM Foundation or anybody that we are associated with, so it's kind of an outside entity that goes into reviewing these applications. I know that Mrs. Hyde will probably tell you that it's a rather lengthy application. It goes into great detail about what is being offered. So I know that these teachers are very dedicated. I know the administration is dedicated to the success of the students here in Pottsgrove. Everybody knows that, well, maybe they don't, and I'll say it out loud. Kids that are involved in music are smarter. If you go and look at the PSSA scores, the aptitude tests that are given, if you would take the music students and just look at their scores, they are smarter. Bottom line, so what you're doing and offering to the students here in Pottsgrove, is astounding. I know the staff here does a wonderful job, and that starts in kindergarten with the general music teachers. I'll give them a shout out here too, because if they don't have a positive experience in that classroom, they're never going to get to the orchestra. They're never going to get to be involved in chorus or the band program here. As I pulled in tonight, the marching band was out on the field. Those kids are very dedicated. Not that the others aren't in other music programs. It is the fall, and that's what the marching band does to support the athletic program here. But again, they're very dedicated. The parents are dedicated. The teachers are dedicated. And certainly your dedication to their craft and their skill set is very, very appreciated. I'm honored to be here tonight. We do have a placard here for you, and I'm going to ask the staff to come up. We'll take a photo op. If anybody else in the board would like to be involved, come on up. It says, "We congratulate you, Pottsgrove School District, for outstanding support of music education, enriching the lives of children and advancing student achievement." So congratulations, Pottsgrove. Job well done. You bet.
I'm up here. I'm barely.
3 years in a row. Should we do that? No.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Can you try tilting that? There we go. Good way. All right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Congratulations.
No, that's not my job, not at all. My name's Kristen Hyde. I teach band and orchestra at Lower Pottsgrove. I'm the department coordinator, and next.
I'm Ben Hayes, the middle school band director.
Amy McMahon, I deal with the wee ones at K-2.
Heather Hodgson, I do general music and chorus at the Lower Pottsgrove, so 3rd to 5th.
I'm Allison Trout. I teach general music and chorus at the middle school.
I'm William Einhorn, and I teach middle and high school orchestra.
I'm Sarah Fritz Schaefer, and I do high school chorus.
Ellie Zarafis, and I do 9 through 12 band.
Would you like this? Can we?
No,
You want to take it?
No, you take it.
Oh, it's yours.
Yeah.
Figure out. We'll figure out where to hang it.
Thank you again, Mr. Kelly. And just to add my voice to one of your comments, in a former district, we actually did an analysis of a GPA at the high school level for students that were in band. We didn't have an orchestra, but band or choir. And we actually found that students averaged 0.7 GPA points higher than non-musicians. So moms, dads, guardians, when you're at home, we got a lot of kids, a lot of wee ones involved in the program. Keep them involved. It's great for their musical development, it's great for creativity, and it's great for academics. So please, thank you.
I just have one thing I wanted to add to that. I mean, I love our music department. I've seen all of you at one point. But also kids on the spectrum and kids with special needs. How music relates to them in a different way, it is so special. So music, I don't know what I would do without music every day in my life. I really don't. But thank you guys for all you do for all our kids.
And without further ado, we'll move over to report of the superintendent.
Thank you. I have two things this evening. First, free breakfast. As of October 1st, 2022, and through the end of this school year, Pottsgrove School District will be able to serve students a school breakfast at no charge. This change is only applicable to the school breakfast program this school year and does not affect a student's eligibility for lunch, whether it's free, reduced, or paid. If you believe you qualify for free or reduced lunch, it is critical that you complete the application on our website prior to October 1. That application impacts a lot of other programs as well. So please complete that application if you feel you are eligible. Secondly, live stream. Pottsgrove is now live streaming athletic events from our gymnasium and Falcon Field. In the near future, once critical items arrive, we will be able to live stream events from our football stadium. Once the installation is complete at our football stadium, we'll be able to live stream 13 sports as well as the Falcon Marching Band field performances. You can view the live stream and archive videos on our Pottsgrove School District Athletics YouTube channel. And I want to thank our Director of Athletics and Co-Curricular Activities, Mr. Steve Ansbach, our Director of Facilities, Yvette Young, and our Director of Technology, Mr. Jeff Bittler, for their work and the work of their teams to accomplish this district goal. It's fantastic. Thank you, guys. I had planned to talk about the Pottsgrove Educational Foundation. We had a meeting planned for last night. Unfortunately, we had to reschedule that meeting, so I'll update you in the future. That's all I have.
All right, we're going to move on to action items personnel, 5.1.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5.1 through 5.9.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 5.1 through 5.9, all action items. Do I have any comments or questions?
Yes, I just have two comments. I would like to thank Ron Lenke for all his time here. You've done an amazing job. I've got to know you very well, and I wish you nothing but the best in the future. And secondly, I didn't know if Ms. McCoy was here that we could actually congratulate her and bring her on board, but not tonight. Okay, that's all I had.
Dr. Nimbers, did you have something?
Yeah, Ron, it's been a pleasure to work with you for the last year and a half, and it's been a lot of fun, and I know we're going to miss you, because you've done a fantastic job. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I do have actually questions, but thank you also, Ron. It's been fun, but I got questions too. Not for you, though. I was just, two questions on the last non-athletic appointments. One was that it says non-athletic appointments, but one of them was for intramural hockey. I was just, if there was, I didn't know if that was just a, oops, putting in the wrong spot, or if there is a reason for that. And also, there are two there for a newspaper for the middle school, which I thought was really fantastic, but I didn't know if we could, at some point in the near future, learn a little bit more about that. Not necessarily now, but like whenever an opportunity arises that we could learn more about that. I think that'd be great.
Let me take your last question first. I think having the newspaper come to a board meeting would be fantastic, and I look forward to having them here to do a presentation on their work, and I think that would be enjoyable. The other appointment of Alex Kriebel is your question?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure why that was, we had 5.8, sorry. 5.8 was athletic appointments, and then 5.9 was non-athletic, but...
I'm looking at Ms. Thompson to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's an appointment under our SOAR program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm getting the high sign, so I'm right.
Any other comments or questions?
I do have one other question, not comment. I want to thank Ron. He is a very valuable member of our team and will be missed. Ron is usually the first person here in the morning and is often my late evening second shift pal as well. So I appreciate everything that you've done for the team. I appreciate you personally and wish you well.
And I also did want to although you've only been the business director for the last year and a half, you were with us for a lot longer and a mainstay when Dave was doing the budget behind the scenes and such like that. So it is with heartfelt wishes, wherever you're going, congrats. All right, we're going to move on to action item 6.1.
I'll make a motion that we approve 6.1.
We didn't vote, we didn't vote.
didn't vote. Oh.
We didn't vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Move on to 6.1.
I would like to make a motion that we approve 6.1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 6.1, the tuition agreement. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
I have one opposed, is that right, Ashley?
No, I said aye, I was just late.
Okay, so it passes unanimously then. Motion carries. Move on to item 6.2.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve 6.2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 6.2, reallocation of capital projects. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
All right, I can take care of this one. At the last Facilities Committee meeting on September 13th, we discussed with the committee about reallocating some of the dollars that were projects that were approved by the board. We had requested, a new athletic field vehicle for them, and we came across a used golf cart for about $5,400. And we're looking to utilize the quote-unquote savings to help pay for another project. The other item we're looking to reallocate is we asked for a new dump truck in the list of projects at the back in May or June of last year. Come to find out that the dump part of that truck was replaced a few years ago, which will extend the useful life of that dump truck, so we don't need to purchase a dump truck at this current time. However, Facilities is requesting, instead of purchasing a dump truck, they purchase another backhoe tractor. The one we had was in for repair, is now back, but when it was out of commission, our grounds team could not do a lot of things like lay out the sideline tarp for the football game, do anything else with the fields without that backhoe. So we're looking to request for a second one. And the board, way back in 2018-2019 school year, approved to have a fence installed along School Lane to help control parking. After speaking with athletics, a more urgent need has arisen. The field up next to Ringing Rocks, which is the JV baseball field, has some serious drainage issues where we can't play any games on that field for the JV team. I think we played maybe one game. Otherwise, the team is scheduled to go away all the time because we can't get on that field to play. As well as the high school varsity baseball field needs some maintaining of the lips of the grass to the infield dirt needs to be maintained. And we're looking to, instead of paying for the School Lane fencing, use those monies to help pay for those projects. You're welcome.
I do have a quick question. With regard to the dump truck, $68,000, so then the new backhoe tractor is probably about that?
We're thinking about $65,000.
Okay, but the one we have is repaired and,
It's been repaired, but it's only one. But the team could use a second one. They can maintain the fields a lot better for themselves. They can be more efficient with their work.
yeah, I was just thinking if it was just the need of one, that, if anything should happen to that, they could perhaps rent something.
That's what we had to do. We rented one while that one was being in repair.
What does that run on the day?
I don't remember, Yvette, do you remember what the rental cost was?
I was going to say like $500
$500 per
or
week?
something.
Yeah, we were being paid $500 a week to rent one.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was a day. So, I'm struggling with that one. If it's something where it helps them cut down hours of labor and that they're going to use the two at the same time, but if it's just, this is the backup.
Yeah. In addition, the tractor that we have is
I think it was purchased in 2005, I believe. I'm not sure exactly the date. But it's a very old tractor, and it did have quite a few issues. And with the, just the parts, the timeframe as far as getting parts, it took probably about a month and a half to get the tractor back. So not having it for such a significant amount of time, in addition, the age of it, I think it would be safe to get a newer model, something more reliable.
And your team could use it too at the same time?
Correct. Maintenance could use the tractor as well as the grounds team, who relies very heavily on the tractor. So if you've seen the sideline tarps, they weigh probably a ton. So moving things like that without the tractor, aeration, snow removal, we rely on it quite a bit. So having a second one would not only help grounds, but also maintenance as well.
Okay, it's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Yeah, apparently this is something that is a lot more useful in practice than you would think about it. I'm thinking of a backhoe, and you and I are thinking the same thing, a 16-inch wide bucket. But this is a smaller, much smaller unit, and is useful for apparently a lot of useful utility in building maintenance and so on. So, yeah, this is something that was discussed at our meeting back on the 13th.
Thank you. Thanks for coming forward and sharing the full details, and thank you, Mr. Linke, as well. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to 6.3, guaranteed energy.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 6.3.
I have a motion and a second to approve 6.3, the guaranteed energy savings agreement. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Graham. Again, at the September 13th Facilities Ops meeting, we invited a representative, Mark Fennell, to introduce the concept to the school board. The Guaranteed Energy Savings Act was passed back in 2016, or was amended back in 2016 to allow some flexibility for capital project procurement using the Guaranteed Savings Act. We worked with CM3 to get ideas of what we can do to fast track some projects that would basically use the energy savings from a project. What the act does is you can undergo an energy savings project, use that savings from your utilities bills to help pay for the project. In theory, you borrow the money, you pay for the project, and the savings would then pay for that debt service payment in a perfect world. So we're looking to interview ESCO companies to see which projects the board would undertake. It costs no money to interview and have them investigate what projects would fall under this act and what we could do with this program. And if you have any other questions, we have Mark Fennell from CM3 for any other questions that you may have.
Yeah, Mr. Fennell, I think, is scheduled to speak later on when we give the report. I don't like to change things, but it might be more appropriate if he spoke now to address the matter before the board. Do you want to do that? I think he's here.
Yeah, he's in the back there.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, I mean, you're more than welcome to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, Mark. Thanks. Push the button there.
Good evening. Do you have questions you wanted me to go through specifically then, or just walk through it then, Dr. Nippert?
I was thinking you walk through and explain.
Sure.
I'm going to call it Geico, and that's wrong.
I'm going to say give the
Sure.
5
The quick
second
overview.
version.
So I think Mr. Linke was explaining it well. So there is legislation that was originally enacted back in 1998 that allows public entities, whether they're school districts, counties, state governments, municipalities, to enter into a Guaranteed Energy Savings Act project. And what this allows a public entity to do is it allows you to look at where you have energy and operational inefficiencies, be able to have those identified and use that as a payment stream to pay for capital projects being done today. And it basically allows public entities access to capital to get work done today. As Mr. Linke indicated, they've since continued to amend and add that legislation to allow you greater flexibility of the types of projects you can get done. At this point, really the conversations with the district was, does it make sense to explore the potential opportunities within the district to bring it back to your attention? So there is no cost, no obligation for considering and looking into it.
A couple other factors is one benefit of the guaranteed energy saving contract is that you're not required to go to the lowest bidder. You can consider what's in the best interest of the district following a review of multiple proposals. You would have to go through a formal proposal process. One of the major changes in the legislation is they allowed you, it used to be that the energy savings would have to meet the construction cost. A few years back, they changed that to add capital avoidance costs, which means if you had a capital project planned on your books, you could use the capital outlay that you would have expended on that planned project as part of the savings in matching up to the GIZA contract cost. Because the contractor has to guarantee that the operational cost savings and the energy savings will meet the construction cost. So you can greatly expand these projects because you're now allowed to use capital avoidance in that calculation. But I mean, the benefit is, a main benefit is you avoid the multi-prime requirement and you avoid the lowest responsible bidder requirement. You're still retaining a responsible bidder because you're selecting that bidder based on a request for proposal process that's fairly detailed.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to 6.4, the sound system.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve 6.4 sound system bid award.
I have a motion and a second to approve 6.4. Do we have any comments or questions?
Again, just a recap for the community.
That's okay. We solicited bids to add sound system at the turf field, as well as improve the sound system at the football field. Because at graduation, we seem to be always running out of sound systems since the quality of that system is not the greatest. We solicited bids. We got back one bid from one vendor, and we're recommending that they move forward with this bid for a total of $58,467.52 for both fields. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I have one. Originally, when we had this, we actually did approve this plan before, as you saw in the administrative, that we originally thought it was going to be at $95,000. Thankfully, it's come under at $58,000. At that particular time, we had talked about possibly using Market Street funds, which is really geared towards athletics. And at that time, we had approximately about $120,000 roughly.
Yeah, it's about the same amount of money.
Because we usually don't spend that money.
Yeah, it's
really
currently sitting in fund balance.
So my question would be, would this affect, because I know how restrained our budget is currently for capital. We have a very limited amount of money in there, and we have a lot of capital plans. Because this came down from the 95 and using almost all of Market Street to 58, and it's still leaving us almost $70,000 left in a fund we almost never use, that maybe the board would consider the option of using Market Street funds instead of capital funds for this. It'll allow the capital to keep that 58 and Market Street, which is actually for athletics, to use funds that it's actually, because this is a one-time fee. I would like to bring that up to the board as for discussion.
Al, you know I love Market Street money, but it's actually for any student program we have. And it's a football game when I was there. I was going to bring it up to the board when we talked, but the band department definitely needs new uniforms. So I would like to see if we can look into that, and they're going to be working on it. Ellie, the band, marching band director, and Dr. Smith are going to be working on it to see how many uniforms they really need, because they have an abundance of students coming up, and they ordered so many uniforms before she came in, but now she's almost out of uniforms for next year. So to me, that would be one thing possibly we could use Market Street money for our band kids. So that just found out Friday night, but they're going to do the homework and bring it to us.
Order different sizes.
Any other thoughts?
Different berry.
Again, like Patty said, I like using the Market Street, whenever we can. I'm guessing, I'd like to think, I really don't, speaking from ignorance, I'd like to think that the uniforms wouldn't take up the other $65,000, $70,000, but I don't know, I really don't know, so. But it would be sort of, we talk about every once in a while using Market Street funds for a particular project, but it always seems like we never really know for sure when we can use them or what's best to use. It would sort of be nice to come up with some sort of guidelines for that so that we can say, hey, here's a project that some teachers have an idea for that could be used with Market Street funds because we already know that it falls under this classification. Right now, I don't feel like we have that, or if we do, it's buried somewhere. So it'd be nice to learn that.
Yeah, the way it's always been is if they had a need for it. One year I remember we were proposed that the band needed it for jackets. And this is going back maybe 10 years, but because they're out there and they're doing their thing on the football game and cavalcades, and they have nothing to protect these uniforms that are very expensive. So we used part of that. They had to fundraise some of it. It was kind of like a match thing. So, like I said, with this that I heard, I would love to see, to help any way we could, but they have to do the homework first. What do you need? How much it's going to cost? Turnaround time, how many students, so then they have to propose that actually to us. So like I said, our principal's working on it with the head marching band director.
All right, so unless I'm hearing other, the board would prefer to use capital funds rather than Market Street funds.
I don't know, I like that I'm using Market Street funds. I just would like to know where and when we can use Market Street funds because it's never really been laid out.
All right. Do I have enough head nods to make a new motion? All right, I'd like to amend this motion to, instead of using capital funds, to use Market Street funds for the $58,467.52. Do I need a second for that?
If Ms. Grimm and Ms. McIntyre agree to that, you can just have a friendly amendment. If you agree to the amendment? Okay. Well, we're adding it.
Yeah, it doesn't say, but I know
Yeah,
you were
so
going to
then we
say.
can
it
do
was
it
on
by
the-
friendly
It said in
amendment.
the administrative part, it was under the capital plan. Okay. So I assume you were using capital funds.
Well, that was, but
Yeah.
So that clarification will be included by friendly amendment. Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments or questions in regards to the new adding on the Market Street funds instead of capital funds?
The only thing I would like to have for the board is an updated list on what's actually in the account. I used to get a report. I forgot, I haven't really gotten one in a while, but if we could just, all as a board, know the dollar figure that's in the account now, so we're on the same
120 and
page.
change.
Thank you.
All right, on the new motion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're going to move on to 6.5. Motion passes.
I will make a motion, we approve 6.5 along with 6.6.
I have a motion and a second to approve 6.5 and 6.6. Do I have any comments or questions? All right, I'm going to ask, in regards to 6.6, capital projects, what happened and why we were under 70,000? Usually we're over. This time we were under 70,000.
Because instead of using playground mulch at West Pottsgrove, we're trying to go with a playground matting to address the drainage issues. Matting's a little more pricier and also provides accessibility for children with disability, which you really can't get with mulch very well.
Yeah, okay, I like that.
Yeah, and it's like rubberized.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, just to make sure? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to action item 7.1.
Which I'll make a motion that we approve 7.1.
I have a motion and a second to approve 7.1. Do we have any comments or questions?
An explanation for the community, please?
Absolutely. So what is being asked in the motion is the current passing grade for classes at the high school is 65. For the Act 158, which is the graduation requirement, and I'm going to back up a little bit. In, I believe, 2018, Act 158 was passed, establishing a graduation requirement for high school students. It is there are multiple pathways, but they're predominantly based on a student's score on the keystones and successful passage of the class. It was supposed to start with the class of 2018, but every year the legislature has pushed it off and kind of waved a magic wand and said it's not a requirement this year. So the current seniors, class of 2023, is the first class that is not getting that waiver. So they have to graduate under the requirements of Act 158. When those students took the trigger courses, Algebra 1, 10th grade ELA, and Biology, the passing score was 65, and they successfully passed the class, or they had to repeat the class. There are a number of students that have passed the class, achieved a 65 or greater, but did not meet the our local Act 158 metric of 70%. So we decided that as a school board, we decided that for those 3 classes, we were going to set a higher grade of 70 rather than 65. So these kids passed that class, did not have to repeat it, but they did not meet this metric that we set up of 70%. So they can't graduate. So that's where we're at right now. Does that make sense?
How many students?
So we're looking at somewhere between 35 and 50 students.
And I think, too, what's important to note with this is it's not even so much how many students, how many this and that. It's, if we think back to when we were in school, and a passing grade was a passing grade, and if, for some reason, we had to explain to our parents, I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, I wasn't proficient on the Keystone, which is this state test, and that's the kickoff here. You're not proficient on the Keystone. Now it goes through this matrix, and we can even have Mr. Voris come up, similarly to how we had the explanation with regard to the electric motion that we had passed, to kind of show there are a series of pathways. You don't even get to do the pathways unless you have a 70, which was an arbitrary number that was chosen by the board. So we're saying to a student, you passed, but not enough. You had to have a 70. Well, how did that come up? Well, it just kind of came up.
Yeah, no, wait a minute, that's not true, only from unless I'm remembering wrong, because I was part of the committee back then. And what it was like, if they didn't pass the test, but received a 70 or better, we gave them a pass on the Keystone as well. It wasn't that they passed the class, but failed the Keystone. It was like, well, if you didn't pass the Keystone, but you got high enough grade, we're going to say wipe the Keystone part. So that's not exactly.
Yeah. So we actually don't have the power to do that. So we can't we can't wave a magic wand and say that they passed the Keystone regardless of the score they have. And let me augment my earlier comments. So there are multiple pathways. The easiest pathways are you pass the Keystones, boom, you're done. If you don't pass the Keystones, but do pass the class, there are additional steps that you can do and still meet, still meet the graduation requirements. You can do an internship. You can get, there's multiple pathways where you actually have to get, so like one pathway requires that you get acceptance to some post-secondary institution, like a two-year college, Montgomery County Community College, or a trade school. Plus, you do 2 other things. So it could be an internship, it could be service learning. It's not just, you know what, we're going to lower it from a 70 to a 65 and you're done. No, there's still additional steps that a student has to do to satisfy the Act 158 graduation requirements.
Question, what if a student isn't looking to go into a secondary school? They're looking to go into the workforce.
So
They have
then,
to take this.
so that pathway would not be an option for them. So, yeah, there are technically, and I'm looking at Mr. Vora's, is it 7 pathways?
Remember.
Right. IP.
Waiver was from the superintendent, wasn't it?
Correct.
That's correct, and there's a cap on the amount that you cannot do more than 5%.
5% of fail or 5% of the school? 5% of the class?
Student population cannot be graduated through a pathway that's a waiver by the school.
Would that waiver be as of 3,000 students or the 250 graduates?
The graduating class. And let me say this. So student achievement has been identified as the primary goal from every stakeholder group we surveyed, whether it was parents, teachers, even students. Improving student achievement is a very important goal for this district. And we are working very hard and frankly expect that a couple years from now, we're not going to have this. We're going to have high levels of proficiency on these keystones, and this is not going to be a challenge. This particular situation we find ourselves in is because the state has continued to push this off, and because the kids passed the class when they took it as 9th or 10th graders, and because they passed it, there's no reason to retake it to try to get that 70%, when frankly, even if they were paying attention, the state's been waiving it every single year, and they could reasonably figure, well, they'll waive it for me too. So that's kind of the unique circumstance we find ourselves in. And that's why we're here looking specifically for this class, because honestly, their options right now, they can't re-enroll in the class. I mean, we're already we're halfway through the first marking period essentially. So it's unlikely that they could even fit that into their schedule and then try to pass that with a 70. So that's kind of the challenge that we're in right now.
So just so I'm clear, there are provisions or steps in place for students who want to go in the workforce, military, you know, they don't have to go to a secondary college, is that right? And we have something in there for our IEP students who would be very difficult to make this challenge, some of them.
So to your last question, yes, there are certain students that will graduate on IEP goals and IEP goals alone.
But am I correct that if you don't have a 70, you can't even partake in the pathways in most of the cases?
Correct. If you don't have a passing grade in the Keystone Trigger courses, Algebra 1, Biology, or ELA 10, that ends the pathways. It doesn't matter what additional things you do. The only pathway left to you would be for the superintendent to waive it.
So some students that attend the Western Center, do they also, I guess in their schedule, they have to follow into this because they know they just take their core classes here? And there are electives over there?
So again, there is one pathway that does address CTC accumulators, so students that are in the career, concentrator rather, that are in that pathway. But it still requires that they pass the classes.
And as I say, one of the things to keep in mind, part of the reason why I went to the talk was about moving it to 65 was, for example, ELA 10 is the one class, is the trigger class as you called it. Right now we're saying they have to have a 70. However, in ELA in 9th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, a 65 is perfectly acceptable to pass, only in that one. So by making it 65, we're making it, continuous across them, so.
Yeah, it's really just an aligning of the grading scale. It's not lowering this or that. It's making it make sense. It's like you can clearly delineate, okay, you've passed the course. We're not going to experience additional hurdles. You still need to go through the pathways. And there aren't additional hurdles that have been placed in front of you. You still have to do the work. But we're just basically saying, you passed, not you passed, but you didn't pass enough, you have a 68, sorry, you can't do the pathways. And if anybody, again, if you feel it's helpful, Mr. Voorhees could come up and show kind of part of the report that we were gonna have from the CIT committee that can actually show, I'm very visual, so I don't know if that would be helpful to see the pathways. If it would, that would be, I'm sure he wouldn't mind coming up a little sooner. Maybe not. Oh.
I'm not sure I can say it any differently.
Oh, that's okay. Would the board like for Mr. Voorhees to come up?
It seems to me that the pathways, while important, confuse the issue here. And the issue at the simplest level is we have two standards of passing. We have one that the district set for 65% in classes, and people did that. And then we have one that a board in the past, in a self-imposed way, the board chose to make that tougher at 70. So now the problem I think we're trying to solve is we have students who are passing classes. So I heard the public question, are we dumbing down? No, the 65 standard has been there for passing, so they passed classes, but at some point in time, we on our own said, well, for these 3 classes, let's make it 70. And we've trapped students because they've passed classes, but they've not done it according to this other standard we set for 70, and now they're trapped. So I don't see it, I see it as simple. We're not dumbing it down. We're saying if passing is 65, passing is 65. Yeah, and back to what you said, Tina, to say, well, passing is 65, but you passed the class, but you really didn't pass. Well, that just is adding confusion and noise. So I struggle. I don't think we're dumbing down because we set the standard of 65 as passing. So let's stick with a single standard. Is I think what we're saying. And that has nothing, well, it's connected to the pathways, but it really isn't. It's just the district standard for what do you need to do here to pass a class? And you need to get a 65 or above.
How many students fall in the category of not reaching the 65 and the Keystone? You said, what, 35 to 50 didn't meet the criteria.
So I'm looking at Mr. Voorhees. I believe the number is 35 that are have a grade of 65, between 65 and 70, or 65 and 69. So those 35 students, their pathways would be closed to them, regardless if they did these other steps.
If I understand this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of, let me try a sports analogy. Let's say you're playing baseball. You're playing baseball, and under normal circumstances, you say 3 strikes and you're out. Well, in this variation of baseball, 3 strikes, you're out, but in some cases, 2 strikes and you're out. And that's kind of the situation. We've raised the standard above what would be normally considered, I guess, acceptable. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I think that's probably an error.
Well, I think, to me, the critical difference is we called the 65 passing. So the students left that class believing they've passed the class and therefore had no motivation whatsoever to retake the class. And here they are as a senior, having passed the class, it's on their transcript, but now they haven't met a different threshold that they may or may not have been aware of despite our communications of that. That if we want to set, like honestly, I think the fairer action would be if you really are interested in setting those keystone classes as more challenging and you want to set it as passing at 70, meaning that you have to retake it if you don't get a 70, that at least is more fair because we're not, correct. But here's where our seniors find themselves.
I'll say this. We can go 65 because we have this issue that we're having now because obviously it was pushed down from the state year after year after year after year. The problem I have is the fact in my mind, who I've always thought of as math, English, and science were your three core subjects. You had to do well in those three subjects. And the fact that we have up to 50 of our 250 graduating kids below a 70 is where I have a major issue. And if this was all during COVID, I would sit there and say, okay, we understand. But these classes were taken years ago. I mean, I'm going to vote yes to move it down to 65 because I'm not going to allow 50 kids to not graduate. But I'm really disappointed that we have 50 kids or up to 50 kids. That's 25% or more of our graduating class that's below a 70. That's unacceptable to me in the future. If we have any other comments or questions, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. 8.1.
Okay. Operations report. Most of the operations report has been discussed already in the earlier sections. So if you want to hear it again. Yeah, I'm not interested in droning on. I want to thank Mark Fennell for showing up here and explaining his program. Just one minor detail, and this is not relevant to what was presented at the meeting on the 13th, but Operations and Yvette have been working on several projects. There was an inspection approximately 2 weeks ago about West Pottsgrove, specifically pointing and roof. And I want to talk about this because we have to plan for major expense items, and that is not something you can do hastily. We have to plan now for what's going to happen in the summer. And a possibility is we're looking at a new roof for West. We definitely are looking at a lot of repointing. I was at the building and took a walk around and looked at it. The other issue that comes up frequently is which was mentioned at the last meeting, is the lighting non-situation at Ringing Rocks. And John pointed out that what happens when equipment fails, and I've taught this course many times, you have the equipment fail in the safest mode possible. Well, what happens is the controller has essentially failed. And what you're going to do with the lighting system is have it fail so the lights don't go off. So you can't turn the lights out. Now, Yvette has ordered equipment which is coming, which will give us a temporary Band-Aid solution so that we can turn the lights out at night. But we need to start looking at another major expense, and these are potentially summer projects that can be very expensive. Several of you have participated in purchasing roofs, so you know what we're talking about. And I've purchased roofs for other buildings and institutions. So this is what's coming down the road. We were looking at perhaps a new roof for West, and I'm not going to speculate what the control system for Rex is going to be. Yeah, I mean, you know. So these are preview of coming attractions or previews of coming ghouls and Halloween. So next month, I may show up in a costume.
It's going to be hard to hide with the lights on.
Oh, no, ghosts can hide.
Anything else, Dr. Nippert?
That's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Do we have any comments or questions for Dr. Nippert? Hearing none, we're going to move on to reported athletics.
Okay, we had a very busy meeting, very filled. We're really trying to not only just do athletics, we're really trying to look into the community and do co-curriculum also. Mr. Osbach gave an overview of the fall sports participation at the high school. Currently at the high school, there's 262 students participating in athletics. Middle school, 173 athletes. This is both an increase in participation from the numbers from last year. So that's good to see the kids that are out there, especially at the middle school. We want to get them involved. Mr. Osbach highlighted the special events that we have coming up at our remaining home football games. Also, he went over and gave a sheet of flyer of all the senior recognition nights. And senior recognition, we also went over, is just recognizing our seniors. It's not about seniors playing time. You know, there's always been, you know, that like my child's a senior, but they're sitting on the bench, you know. So he's really been trying to make that very clear to parents, the athletes, and the coaches. So we went over that. Hula, the live streaming of athletics competitions were highlighted by Mr. Ansbach. And this is what we were talking about earlier, how we're eventually going to get Hoodle. Isn't it Hoodle? Huddle that will actually be able to broadcast out to the spectrum or to the stadium. And I had made a suggestion, once we do get to that point, possibly we can get our veterans, and I know there's one in Spring City, but I remember they used to bring a bus up here for some of our games, and maybe we could let them know that we're going to be highlighting and live streaming these and invite them. We went over co-curriculum. After-school supplemental programs, as we did talk about, was being paid by SOAR, and SOAR stands for Support, Opportunity, Achievement, and Relationships. Community Relations, Mrs. Sabalski, is she here? She was here, wasn't she? Do you want to come up and kind of go over all your highlights? Because you did such a phenomenal job. I do have your, just recap, that's all.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So at the committee meeting, I basically shared some numbers as far as our social media engagement goes, such as like different insights on Facebook, like post reach, post engagement, and I was happy to share with the committee that all of our academic posts are actually being received very well. Even a little bit higher than our athletic posts, which I was kind of surprised about. So I'm glad that the community is embracing all of the new content that is on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. There's a lot there. I'm trying to think what else I talked about. I'm blanking right now. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the websites.
Oh, yes, of course, the website. I'm still going through and editing a lot of things that are on there, but I'm happy to say that all of the homepages, so that's the 5 buildings, and the district homepage are all better organized. A lot of the dead links are being updated or deleted completely. I've really been trying to update all of the photo galleries on a daily basis as well. So that is something that I do every day. Go on the website and check things out. I like to block out a certain amount of time to try and fix all of those things for you.
Well, you're doing a phenomenal job for us, and I wanted
Thank you.
everybody to recognize who you are and the hard work you're doing for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you. We were informed the Staff Service Awards were handed out at the opening day. 3 staff members received 30-year awards, 20 received 20-year awards, and 11 received 10-year awards, so congratulations to them all. We discussed the Education Foundation will be meeting in the upcoming weeks, and the Honor Roll Dinner will be held December 10th at 2022. The Alumni Honor Roll nominees are Matthew Hillman, Linda Numagami, Chad Saylor, and Sherry Wunderlich. I had inquired, how do you get on, how you nominate somebody? So I'm going to find out more information about how we can nominate somebody. I am going over, Mrs. Clemmer highlighted the ongoing partnership with Upper Pottsgrove Township and the preliminary upgrades that are being discussed at Hollenbach Park. So they are potentially going to add additions to the walking trail, pickleball courts, basketball courts, frisbee golf, upgraded athletic fields, and a pavilion. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the report of the curriculum.
Okay, so Mr. Voorhees was kind enough to offer to provide that information. Thank you.
Good evening. Sorry it took me so long to walk from the back of the room. We did review a couple of things last Tuesday evening, so that was back on September 20th. The first thing we talked about is our math curriculum renewal. Actually, Mr. Leach and Mr. Lappick, this dates back to when, not that it dates you at all, but it dates back to when you first started as chairs on that committee. Every year, we look at very specific content areas together as a district to determine how we want to move forward with our instruction, our programming, and the resources that we have in place for that. This year, we're going through that process with our mathematics. For those of you who have been around, you'll remember that the last time we did this, we're now in our 6th year of implementation. It's hard to believe. So throughout this school year, we put together teams, both an elementary and a secondary team, and those teams are representative of teachers at various grade levels. All buildings are represented. Technology is represented, special education is represented, and they really go through the process of researching what other programs look like in terms of connecting with other schools, what are resources out there that might better prepare our students in the area of mathematics, and how might we put those particular pieces in place. We have a goal of coming to our CIT committee on April 18th. To make those recommendations together as a team. And you might recall that we did something very similar last spring in front of the full board, and we did that for ELA resources last year. So this is sort of the next step in our ongoing curriculum renewal efforts. We also talked about EdInsight. EdInsight is our new data dashboard. For some context, EdInsight replaces at least some of the functions of ECRA, but to be very clear, it provides far more functionality for our teachers in terms of how they're using that. Really, it's a data dashboard, and we currently have teachers spending a lot of time building spreadsheets, and they use all that information to make complex decisions about when and how we provide interventions for students. This data dashboard provides some of that functionality right away so that teachers jump more quickly into the process of planning what that appropriate instruction looks like. So Dr. Finnerty actually demonstrated some of the reports that we are looking at. It does house quite a bit of information. It includes statewide testing, including PSSA and Keystone exams, some of the universal screeners that we have in place at the local level. It includes, so exact path diagnostics might be in there, attendance, grades, even discipline is in there. So that when we're making decisions about what kinds of support students need, we're looking at the entire child or the whole child rather than just one piece of that information. So currently we're working through the process with different groups to kind of get that up and running. As you might guess, it's a new system. It requires a lot of conversation with our staff and a lot of job-embedded professional learning where they're kind of learning about that tool and learning how it is applicable to them at their particular level. At the high school level, Dr. Smith provided an update on the internship program. If you recall, that was a district goal last school year, and we do have that in place, and that's in place for our current seniors, although there's already conversation about offering that to grade levels even before the senior year. We do have some students that are participating in that. We do have several business partners that are working through the process so that in partnership with those business partners, we're able to provide more opportunities for students in terms of what that work experience might look like. So that was another piece. We also talked about the middle school schedule. There's been some changes to our middle school schedule, and really that was done for three pretty clear overall reasons as Dr. Gonzalez has been working through that. One of the main reasons is really if we're serious about increasing our scores in both mathematics and ELA, one of the things was how do we look at providing more instructional time without impeding any other area? So that was one goal. How do we provide, or let's build in additional instructional time for our ELA and math. How do we make sure that there's embedded intervention periods so that when a student's struggling in any one of those areas or any other area for that matter, there's an intervention period built in where students can get that support and remediation that they need or enrichment that they might want or need. And the other, really another core reason for the revision is, it may be hard to believe, but the building was not operated on the same bell schedule. They couldn't ring bells because every grade level was sort of operating on a different schedule. So this gets everybody on one system where we can ring bells. Dr. Nippert brought up, he noticed that it only allows for about 3 minutes of transition time. And actually, although Dr. Nippert was worried about can students really travel in 3 minutes from one part of the building to the other, one of the positives Dr. Gonzalez reported is that we've actually seen a decrease in behaviors during transition times because kids don't have a lot of time to do things any other than move in the hallway. So that was a positive piece. And then rounding out our evening was Mr. Bittler talking about a couple of things related to technology. One of those is really all about cybersecurity and things that we can put into place both now and into the future in kind of a plan that's in place. But that really looks at antivirus things. It looks at physical security of our data or of our computer, lack of a better word, the computer equipment that's housed in a closet, if you would. What does the physical security look like of that? Data closets, that's what I was looking for, Mr. Bittler. Email traffic, so all those things are being looked at right now. And then finally, a conversation came up about Chromebooks versus iPads or MacBooks. So really the conversation is really at beginning conversational level, really speaking about student devices at this point in time. But the conversation is, there's a potential to save some money if we were to move to Chromebooks as opposed to a MacBook or an iPad. There's a lot of conversation that needs to occur related to that. Part of that is looking at the leasing schedule that we have in place with some of the equipment and devices already in place. Part of that is looking at functionality of the many pieces of software that our teachers use for instruction and making sure that there's compatibility pieces in place. But given it's a potential savings of money, it's something that the committee asked Mr. Bittler to to continue to explore and at least begin having the conversations with teachers about what a change for student devices could look like for us here in the district. Mrs. McIntyre, did I leave out anything?
You didn't. Thank you very much. I know one thing we were talking about with regard to the Chromebooks was I can't think of many companies, that you go to work and they have these that they hand you to do your work. And it's, for me, at least a practical piece for the students to kind of empower them and have them be more familiar with something that they might be using when they move on from here. So I appreciate that. And then in the meantime, Mrs. Breyer has the pathways. And then there was also the student's journey. If you wouldn't mind kind of highlighting this, and it was hard, and I apologize that we didn't have the visual ahead of the prior discussion. I think it's going to be, at least for a quote-unquote student like myself, much easier to understand the visual.
Absolutely. And the coloring on that is not great. So just for reference sake, and I'll try to say this differently than it's already been said, but thinking about Act 158, that dates back, I believe Governor Wolf signed that back in 2018. We as districts didn't get information until January of 2019 in terms of making decisions about that. This board acted on the local decisions that needed to be made upon that in April of 2019. Throughout the pandemic, and really mostly because of the pandemic, the face of Keystone proficiency has changed multiple times. And that's really mostly because of talking about the cohort for which it would be mandated for students. So the document that you have in front of you was actually just released most recently and actually updated within the last, I'm going to say, 3 to 4 weeks. And there's also one that's called the Student's Journey, and I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that. I don't prefer the Student's Journey. Oh, this is the Student's Journey. I am a very sequential person. This brings me a lot of anxiety. But in essence, what this shows you is a start point up at the top left-hand corner. And that start point really starts with a simple question of, did a student meet the proficiency level on a Keystone exam? And really that can be broken down into a yes or no answer. The best thing, and to complement some conversation that's already occurred, the best thing we can do as a district and for our students is to answer yes to any one of these questions as soon as possible for kids. So the easiest way to do that is for students to demonstrate proficiency on the Keystone exam itself. What that does, as soon as a student demonstrates proficiency on the Keystone exam, all these other things that create complexity in a student's life, and actually for a school district, all these other things can be eliminated. So in terms of some of the conversation that I've heard this evening, in terms of are we making this requirement easier? Well, perhaps that can be said. But a couple of things I would note. First, again, this was put into place back in 2018, so some of our students actually took a Keystone exam even before the pandemic and is only now becoming relevant for them. And a lot has changed in the world since possibly for those students who have taken the assessment and where they find themselves right now as a senior. But more importantly, we as a district together are expecting more. If we want more kids to get to Keystone proficiency and answer that yes very quickly, we want our kids becoming proficient on the Keystone exam. So that's the first thing we have to work on. So that means we're essentially increasing the rigor of what's expected of students at that classroom level. Second of all, and it's already been pointed out by various members of the board and the committee, it's not just the grade-based requirement. That grade-based requirement is just one piece of a whole set of additional things, or I believe Mrs. McIntyre referred to them as obstacles, other hurdles, if you would, that a student will need to jump over. So that grade-based level answer question needs to be hit first, and then they might need one artifact, they might need 2 artifacts, they might need as many as 3 additional artifacts that they're providing, which could be any number of things to get through that particular piece. what am I missing here? So this is really, it's all going back to that Algebra 1, English 10, and biology pieces. At the end of the day, I'll say the simple thing to do is increase the expectations for everybody so students are demonstrating proficiency on that. But in the meantime, and for that group of students that we're talking about, we want to make sure that these pathways are open for them rather than closed and shut down. Because as of right now, although I said there's other hurdles, some students can't even get to them without that adjustment to the grade-based requirement. And I felt like I was rambling through that because that was my mind trying to make sense of this complex document. And I told you I'm a concrete sequential person.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but this is the one that Tina referred to lovingly as the Candyland map.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of resemble that, you know, but again, you couldn't even play Candyland if you didn't have a 70. You could have had a 69 and you couldn't play it.
Right.
But honestly, I think, and thank you for pointing all that out. I know sometimes, I'm going to say students, and I'm going to count my own kids in that. They were not highly motivated. You know, what do the keystones matter? It matters. And you do not have to do this. Try your best, you know, on those. And for some, not everyone can succeed in those. I'm, again, going to claim myself, terrible standardized test taker. This might have been hard for me. And so in that case, I would need to participate in the pathways. And that's okay, you know, as well. Like, I just, yeah, I think it was important to see the visual. And Mrs. Breyer, if you wouldn't mind jumping back to the pathways and just kind of show the pathways that these are the options that the students would need to
Right. Essentially,
participate in.
right there, Mrs. Breyer, if you could scroll back up just a tad, thank you. So on the top level there, you're seeing really two of the main 5 pathways. The first is Keystone proficiency. So you're proficient or better on each of those 3 Keystone exams. A second piece related to that is a composite. So that allows you to get less than proficient on one of your exams, of one of the Keystone exams, but you still need to have a composite score. So essentially the sum of each of those needs to be greater than a particular amount. So even though you failed one, you might still reach that kind of baseline score for all 3. In addition from that, and sort of where it breaks into 3 pieces down about midsection of that, what you were looking at, there's the CTE concentrator, Mrs. Grimm, that's what you were referring to for students who might be at the Western Center, could be helpful for a student in that situation. And the ones that we were talking about predominantly as having additional pieces of criteria that need to be met beyond the grade-based requirement include that alternative assessments and evidence-based pathways as well. So again, by that adjustment, it opens up more doors and hopefully reduces obstacles for students. Any questions? Absolutely. I make sure every director gets one of these, so it's in there. It's also in board docs, but I can certainly forward both that and a student's journey to everybody tomorrow, because I don't think the student's journey is in that one. I'll send it to you in color, because I know, yeah. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, we're going to move on to new business. Dr. Finity, you're up.
I unfortunately, the only new business that I'd like to call attention to is this evening we did have a senior celebration for our field hockey. And I do very much like to attend those, but unfortunately I was here with you fine people. So congratulations. I believe we had 12 seniors on our field hockey. So congratulations to those girls, and I hope we got the W tonight. Tennis was earlier today, Mr. Tellis. We had, I believe you're showing me, is it 8 or 9? Okay, we had 9 seniors. Okay, and a W, so congratulations. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Tina.
I have said way too many words tonight. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Patty?
I have just two things. I would like to thank the Pottstown Hook and Ladder Fire Company. They made a donation of a fire truck to the Western Center this past week. It was videotaped by Tom Kelly during the arrival at the Western Center, and it did air on WFMZ. So now the students can have hand-on that are studying to be firemen. Fire people, firemen, yeah. So we're very, very excited. We'd like to thank them very much. The second thing I do have is we have our Pink Out Night coming up on October 7th. This is a night where we're trying to get everybody to wear pink, and the Booster Club's selling T-shirts. And you can go to their website and get them, and part of the proceeds goes to the Phoenixville Cancer Center for the Patient Care Fund. So get your T-shirts, order your T-shirts, and that's all.
Thank you. Jay?
I have nothing at this time.
Coming around, Dr. Neppert.
No.
Jim? Bill? Ashley, online, you have anything? I'm going to take that as a no.
Sorry.
Comes to me.
Kinda.
Two things.
I was going through like
Oh.
a bunch of different screens to finally get to the mute. No, sorry. I don't have anything.
Well, thank you. I had two quick things. First thing, I wanted to personally thank Tina for covering for me for the last couple of meetings because I had a few things to take care of with family. And the second thing, I need the board members to have a small executive session afterwards that was not originally scheduled. Just give me like 15 minutes to 20 minutes. We'll meet in one of the classrooms. Is that okay? It's for personnel. And that's it. Next, we have any additional public comment. Any public comment from anybody here? Come on up. Same as before, state your name, township, 2 minutes.
Jeanette Clifton, Lower Pottsgrove. I'm worried that we keep changing definitions of words. Like, how on earth do you, for a bias, do subconscious manner? I mean, isn't that a perspective?
Can you repeat that? I missed that word.
Subconscious? Yeah, I mean, isn't that, like, subjective? I mean, how are you supposed to know what somebody's subconsciously thinking?
If you could elaborate a little bit as onto what? I don't know what we're talking
Bias,
about.
the
I'm sorry.
attitudes or beliefs we have about a person or group that affects our understanding, actions, and decisions in a conscious or subconscious manner.
I'm sorry. I mean, I apologize. In what aspect are we talking about? Which, are we talking about policy?
She's reading a policy for the threat assessment. I think it was discussed earlier today.
What number was that? So
I
can-
don't know, it's under definitions, 200 pupils?
236.1. 236.1, the threat assessment policy that was discussed tonight.
Okay, I see what you're saying, the bias, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying now. Okay, go ahead with your comment.
Well, just that the subconscious is like, how are you supposed to know what somebody's subconsciously thinking?
Understood. Any additional comment? I mean, we're not allowed to, it's comments, so we're not allowed to interact back and forth, but we could definitely talk about that afterwards, but I wanted to get you the full thing.
And also the threat assessment, a little farther down, how a fact-based process for the assessment of an intervention with students whose behaviors may indicate a threat to the safety of the student or other students. Well, is that physical safety? Is that emotional safety? Does it cover all of safety? And isn't that subjective as well? Huh?
Thank you very much, Ms. Clifton. Definitely something we can look at. Do I have any other additional public comment? Anything online? If nothing, then meeting adjourned. Need a motion?